About AD 410, the Roman Empire gave up its provinces of Britain, telling the British that they could not protect them from the invaders of the Low Countries and Germany. We call the 300 years after the Romans left Britain the Dark Ages. We know very little about the warrior kings who ruled the British Isles during this time. The first tales of a British warrior king called Arthur come from the Dark Ages. He is said to have led the struggle against the invaders for some years, but was killed at the Battle of Camlan in 537. 300 years later, one king had become more powerful than all the others. He was King Egbert of Wessex. By 829, he had forced the rulers of the other kingdoms to acknowledge him as their leader. 6 years later, the Danes began coastal raids on England. King Egbert fought against them and succeeded in driving them away for a time. When he died, his son Aethelwulf became King of Wessex. Aethelwulf had 5 sons. Amazingly, 4 of them became kings after him. His crown passed first to Aethelbald, who died in 860. Then to Aethelbert, who lived for a further 5 years, and then his brother Aethelred. Aethelred had constant trouble with the Danes. In 865, the Danes invaded and occupied Kingdom of East Anglia. The following year, they ravaged Northumbria, and in 870 attacked Wessex. They were driven back by Aethelred and his young brother Alfred, who became king when Aethelred died in April 871. Alfred was a brilliant leader, but the Danes were a formidable enemy. In January 878, they attacked his palace and drove him out. He quickly formed a new army, however, and defeated the Danes only 5 months later at Edington in Wiltshire. The Danes agreed to leave Wessex alone and retreated to East Anglia. When Alfred died in 899, his son Edward became King of Wessex. Edward was a real warrior, determined to make the Danes in England submit to his rule. By the time he died, he ruled over Wessex and Mercia, East Anglia and Northumbria. His son, King Athelstan, added Yorkshire to his realm. The most remarkable thing about Athelstan's successor Edmund was that he was stabbed to death while arresting an uninvited guest at a feast in 946. Eadred, next on the throne, defeated the Norsemen who had invaded Northumbria. Then came Eadwig, who was only 15 when he became king in 955. Only 4 years later, the crown passed to Edgar. By the time he came to the throne, the Wessex kings had established their supremacy over most of England. King Edgar was the first king to be crowned ruler of all the English at a special service at Bath Abbey in 973. King Edward Mart, who ruled from 975 to 978, was only 13 when he became king on the death of his father, King Edgar. His stepmother, Queen Elfrida, had wanted the throne for her own son Aethelred. She plotted for 3 years before inviting Edward to Corfe Castle in Dorset, where he was murdered by her servants. Next followed was Aethelred II from 978 to 1013 and 1014 to 1016. In 994, the King of Norway and the son of the King of Denmark sailed their longboats up the River Thames at the head of the largest Viking army ever seen in England for 50 years. Aethelred bought them off with a huge amount of gold. His nickname, the Unready, doesn't mean that he was unprepared, but that he was badly advised. In 1013, King Sweyn of Denmark invaded England. Aethelred fled to Normandy in northern France, while Sweyn ruled England. Aethelred thus gained another nickname, Aethelred the Exile. When Sweyn died a year later, the English asked Aethelred to return. Next followed was Edmund II, who in 1016 ascended to the throne. Edmund's reign only lasted for less than a year. The Danes, led by Sweyn's son Knut, had invaded again in 1015. They defeated Edmund and forced him to divide England in two. Knut took the lion's share, leaving Wessex to Edmund. When Edmund II died, Knut became king of all England. When his father Sweyn died in 1014, he also became king of Denmark. Finally, there was a peace between the two countries after many years of bitter war. Before Knut died, he named his son Hafeknut as his heir. He was in Denmark unable to claim his throne. Some English noblemen suggested that his brother Harold should rule England in the meantime. Harold agreed, but once he was in control, he had himself declared king and ruled for 5 years until he died. When Harold died in 1042, Harthacnut sailed to England, but he became so despised that when he collapsed and died unexpectedly in 1042, there were few tears shed for him. Next followed Edward the Confessor. Edward, the son of Aethelred II, now came to the throne. He was a pious, saintly man, hence his nickname, the Confessor. The 24 years of his reign were mercifully peaceful, except for a violent feud with Godwin, the Earl of Wessex, over who should succeed him as king. In 1066, Harold II came to the throne. Edward died childless. There were 3 people with strong claims to the English throne: William, the Duke of Normandy, who had been promised the throne by Edward, Harold, the son of Godwin, and Harold Hardrada, the ruler of Norway. Harold was in England when Edward died, while the others were overseas. William and Harold Hardrada invaded England. Harold defeated the Norsemen in Yorkshire, then marched his army south to Hastings in Sussex to do battle with William. The 2 armies met on 14th of October 1066 near Hastings, where Harold was struck by an arrow and killed.